Welcome to the Overlooked Dodgers. This is a new series about overlooked players where I'll put together a roster with the most underrated player seasons from an individual team's history. And we'll start with the Dodgers here since they just won the World Series. Normally most everything on this channel is entirely vibes-based, but with this series I'm going to be leveraging big data analytics to map out the customer journey, during which I will generate baseball history insights in order to bring about customer success, which I'm told will lead to more meaningful customer engagement. So please like and subscribe. Okay, so how does this big data model work? Well, I'm going to create a team of the most underrated Dodgers players through a thoroughly pseudoscientific method that is also kind of fun, hopefully. For each position, I'm going to find the highest WAR season by a Dodgers player who never ranked top 5 in MVP voting or Cy Young voting in any season during their career. And I'm also going to disregard any season that received a single MVP or Cy Young vote. Let's go through the first one together so it's clear. So we're starting with catcher. Here's a list of every catcher season for the Dodgers ranked by WAR since 1931. Prior to 1931, the MVP award was kind of weird, so that's why we're making that the cutoff. And for each position we do, the player had to play at least 51% of their games at that position. So we've got Mike Piazza, who we know probably landed in the top 5 in MVP voting at some point in his career. Yeah, several times. So we can discount any season by Piazza. Roy Campanella won a bunch of MVPs, so skip over him. Now, Russell Martin. Let's see. The highest he ever ranked in MVP voting was 13th, so he's eligible, but if he received any MVP votes in that specific 5.6 WAR season for the Dodgers, then we can exclude that season. Nope, not a single vote, despite winning the Gold Glove and Silver Slugger. So there we go, 2007 Russell Martin is our catcher. Makes sense? Then we are at the awareness stage in your customer journey. And I think my big data method has returned a pretty solid result here. I'd say Martin was a generally underrated guy in his time. 14-year career as a quality defensive backstop with a plus bat. He put up 38.8 WAR, which is pretty damn solid. Since 2000, he ranks behind only Joe Mauer, Buster Posey, and Yadi Molina. But I don't think most people would think of him if you asked who the top 5 catchers of the past 20 years were. First base. So if I was doing this based more on vibes, I would go with 1970's Wes Parker, who put up 5.2 WAR in 1970 while slashing .318, .392, .458, and remaining utterly anonymous, at least to me, despite ranking 5th in MVP voting that year. Instead, we're going all the way back to 1934 and Sam Leslie with a 4.2 WAR season for Brooklyn. This was a pretty great year for Leslie, who slashed .332, .409, .456, but couldn't crack this list somehow. I'm sure many of you are in the consideration portion of your customer journey at this point, and perhaps you are considering how dumb this exercise is, or you are considering how dumb MVP voting has been historically. Now, I'm totally cool with MVP voting being vibes-based, otherwise why even have people vote on it? But if we go back to the 1934 MVP voting that snubbed Sam Leslie, and scroll up to the American League voting, we'll see a particularly egregious example. Clearly Lou Gehrig was a god amongst men that season, but he came in at 5th. His own teammate Lefty Gomez somehow ranked higher. Detroit catcher Mickey Cochran won for the pennant-winning Tigers despite only playing in 129 games and putting up 4.5 WAR. But this is not a video about the Tigers or the Yankees or the American League even. This is about the Dodgers. We are in the action stage, motherfucker. Second base, Davey Lopes, 1975. I feel like this big data methodology is proving itself once again because I'd say Davey Lopes does fit the description of an underrated dude. He was a consistently good-hitting second baseman with top-tier base-running skills and cromulent defensive abilities. Not like he's some guy you've never heard of or anything, but he was possibly a bit better than you remember. He hit for consistently mediocre batting averages, but walked a lot, including 91 times in 75, and in his early days, he was a tremendous base stealer, stealing 77 in 1975, while only being caught 12 times, an 87% success rate. In fact, Lopes ranks 3rd all-time in stolen base percentage for players with more than 400 career steals, trailing only Tim Raines and Willie Wilson. Third base, Billy Grabarkowitz, 1970. Man, I guess I'm just woefully ignorant about the early 70s Dodgers. This is the same season as Wes Parker, and who the hell is this guy? He put up 6.5 WAR, got no MVP votes ever in his career, and in fact never had another good season after this. But the dude was on one in 1970, slashing .289, .399, .454. Grabarkowitz had been considered the fastest player in the Dodgers system until a minor league home plate collision in 1968 broke his ankle and leg in 6 places. His prognosis was that he'd never play baseball again, but he defied those odds to put up this great season. However, injuries would nag him the rest of his career and he'd never be the same. Shortstop, Bill Russell, 1982. A key part of the late 70s, early 80s Dodgers run, Russell was a consistently terrific defensive shortstop who never hit much, but in 82 hit just enough to rack up an excellent 4.9 WAR season. Left field, and the early 70s Dodgers continue to be a font of underrated dudes. Willie Crawford was a longtime outfielder for the Dodgers who was a part-time player until his breakout year in 73, where he put it all together, slashing .295, .396, .453. Centerfield. Talk about an underrated guy. Willie Davis was a phenomenal player who is squarely in the Hall of Very Good. He put up 60.7 career WAR, and he put up a whopping 8.3 WAR in 1964, but didn't get a single MVP vote. This is certainly due to the fact that most of Davis's value was derived from his first-class center field defense and his base running skills, not the things MVP voters are usually swayed by. He was also undervalued on the 62 and 72 Dodgers teams, where he put up 5.8 and 5.7 WAR and received nary an MVP vote. Right field. Len Konecki, 1934. This one's a wild ride, literally. Len Konecki put up one terrific season in his short career, slashing .320, .411, .509 in 34. The following year, he would be cut mid-season by the Dodgers after a slow start where he hit .283, .369, .372, which isn't terrible, but nonetheless, manager Casey Stengel sent him packing. The day after he was cut, Konecki hopped on a flight from St. Louis to New York, drank a quart of whiskey, and started harassing passengers and flight attendants until he had to be restrained and removed from the flight in Detroit. He then chartered a flight to New York, during which he got into a fight with the pilot, tried to take control of the plane, and was hit multiple times on the head with a fire extinguisher by a fellow passenger and by the pilot. Konecki would die of a cerebral hemorrhage from the blows. Whew. DH, Ron Cey, 1978. Another of those Hall of Very Good players, the Penguin gives us 75% of the Dodgers' great infield of the late 70s, early 80s. Just missing Steve Garvey, who would have to be on the overrated list. Dude got so many undeserved MVP votes in his career, we got stuck with him wanting to get votes after retirement. I'd vote Penguin, though. He was a much more valuable overall player than Garvey throughout his career, much better defender at a more premium position, yet never got nearly the MVP love. And he had a much less disreputable post-baseball career than Garvey, too. Here he is appearing in a cameo on an episode of Columbo.
This is Ron Cey. He's the baseball player.
That's right.
That's the way to hustle, Penguin. Nice job.
Starting rotation. We've got a 1A and a 1B starter on the staff, and both come from the same season, 1969, where Bill Singer and Claude Osteen put up nearly identical seasons, winning 20 games apiece with sub-3 ERAs and over 300 innings. These two combined for 636 innings in 69, which is nearly a full workload for a modern-day 5-man rotation, yet neither received a single MVP or Cy Young vote. Now, I would expect the pre-1970 era to be a bit skewed for pitchers here, because before 70, writers only voted for first place for Cy Young. Singer and Osteen probably get some third-place votes if they were using the updated system. Number 3 starter, Johnny Padres, 1957. Johnny Padres won the 1955 World Series MVP, making him an all-time Dodgers legend. So how is he underrated? Listen, our big data model does not lie. But again, I think the period between 1956 and 1969 is really skewed here. The Cy Young Award started in 56, but voting wasn't expanded until 1970, as mentioned earlier. So people stopped voting for pitchers as much for the MVP, but there were generally only 2 or 3 guys getting votes for Cy Young. So you end up with some stuff like this, where somebody like name guy Granny Hamner gets MVP votes despite being sub-replacement level, while Padres, with his excellent season, gets no love. And also, pitcher wins were obviously the overriding stat of the day, and Padres had a measly 12. Number 4 starter, Ismael Valdez. This was a surprise, one of those guys that bounced around a lot in the early aughts. I didn't think he ever had as good of a year as he did in 1997, putting up 5.3 WAR with a 2.65 ERA. And we get to round out this rotation with an all-time name guy, Van Lingle Mungo.
Van Lingle Mungo.
This team could be extremely volatile with Konecki and now Mungo, who was the most fined player of his era. There's a story of Mungo's exploits, and I don't want to relay the whole thing for time's sake, but it ends with this screwball comedy scene. Babe Hamburger smuggled Van Lingle Mungo in a laundry cart to a seaplane in order to flee the country. And no, that country was not Fredonia.
Fredonia's gone to war. Each native son will grab a gun and run away to war.
For the bullpen, I'm putting a rule into my big data model that you can only have 2 swingmen types on here, who must have 51% of outings be in relief. The rest of your bullpen must have 80% of outings in relief. Vito Tamulus. The name guy cup runneth over. Vito gives us a swingman type who can start in a pinch, but mainly works out of the pen. Larry Sherry. I mean, come on. Another name guy swingman. Tom Niedenfuer, 1983. Niedenfuer was phenomenal in 83 and really was pretty great from 82 to 85 before falling off. Jim Brewer, 1972. Brewer put up a tremendous season in 72 with a 1.26 ERA in 78 innings. Takashi Sato, 2007. Another great relief season with a 1.4 ERA and 10.9 Ks per 9. And rounding it out with Jay Howell, 89. This is a pretty great bullpen. Now for my bench. Casey Blake, 2009. Yeah, completely forgot about this guy, but he had a surprisingly consistent career as a corner infield, corner outfield utility guy with a solid glove. And he put up a great season for the Dodgers in 09. Chris Taylor, 2017. Taylor put up some great super utility seasons for the Dodgers, the best of which was this 2017 one where he played pretty much everywhere in the field. Backup catcher Will Smith, 2022. Like Taylor, we all know about this guy now, but in 50 years, people might look back on him like Johnny, whatever that guy's name was. Johnny Grabowski. Rafael Furcal, 2010. Furcal was pretty underrated in his career due to generating most of his value on defense. He put up a solid 39.5 WAR, but didn't get a lot of MVP votes despite playing for good teams throughout. In 05, he really got overlooked, putting up 6.5 WAR for the Braves, but he also had some good seasons for the Dodgers, including 2010. Gene Hermansky, 1948. Here's a decent corner outfielder who mainly played a part-time role, but did have one great full year in 1948. And finally, Orlando Hudson in 09, a guy I didn't even realize had played for the Dodgers, but he put up a solid year for them at second. That gives me a pretty deep team. This team totals 121.4 WAR, which would basically make it the best team ever, but we'll see how that compares to other teams in this series of videos. At this point in your customer journey, we've reached the retention stage where I will ask you to like and subscribe and comment on these overlooked Dodgers. And then we will complete the customer journey with advocacy, where I ask you to share and spread the word about this exciting new big data model. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next in this series.